If you eat these fish, stop right now. That might sound dramatic, but it's the truth. Certain fish can pump your body full of toxins, mercury, or other nasties you never bargained for. Everyone says fish is healthy, it's lean protein, it's got omega-3s. Fair enough. Some fish are incredible for you, and we'll discuss the good ones later. But some of the most popular fish can skyrocket your risk of heart disease, mess with your blood sugar, and increase your risk of certain cancers. So in this video, you'll discover 9 of the worst fish to avoid, as well as healthier alternatives, and guidelines for deciding whether it's healthy or harmful. First up, be careful with shrimp. Shrimp is America's sweetheart seafood. People throw it in salads, pastas, sushi, and you name it. But if it's farmed shrimp, things can get a bit sketchy. High demand means giant ponds crammed with shrimp, which means bacteria and parasites spread like wildfire. To deal with this, farms often blast their ponds with antibiotics and chemicals. And as a result, you end up swallowing residues of stuff you never intended to eat. Even worse, antibiotic overuse in shrimp farming has led to antibiotic-resistant bacteria popping up in samples across the globe, potentially contributing to the next pandemic. If you see shrimp with no explanation about the source, you might be rolling the dice. Some farms follow strict standards, but many don't. So check labels, research, ask questions, and go for the wild-caught shrimp if you can. And if wild-caught isn't an option, look for certifications that mean someone's actually watching what's going on. Shrimp with labels like ASC, short for Aquaculture Stewardship Council, BAP, which stands for Best Aquaculture Practices, or EU Organic, meaning it meets the European Union's organic farming standards, are what you're looking for. These stamps don't mean the shrimp are necessarily perfect, but they do mean someone's keeping an eye on antibiotic use, water quality, and overall farming conditions. At number 9, we have tilapia. You've probably seen tilapia in just about every grocery store. It's cheap, it doesn't taste too fishy, and people assume it's a safe option. But just like shrimp, most of the tilapia on the market is farmed, and farmed tilapia, especially the stuff coming out of Asia, is often raised in overcrowded ponds with poor water quality. These conditions make disease a constant issue, which means farmers end up using antibiotics and pesticides to keep the fish alive. And again, when you eat those fish, you're also going to eat some of those chemicals. But beyond that, tilapia has a nutritional profile that's a little misleading. People think that they're doing something good for their heart by choosing this fish, but tilapia contains way more omega-6 than omega-3. Omega-6 are anti-inflammatory fats, and that's what makes salmon and sardines so good for your heart, your brain, your joints, and everything. But omega-6s can push your body into an inflammatory state. Some studies suggest that tilapia contains omega-6 to 3 ratios that can be as high as 11 to 1. That's bad news for chronic inflammation, which plays a huge role in things like arthritis, asthma, heart disease, and diabetes. If you're going to eat tilapia, at least make sure it's not imported from countries with loose regulations. Some of the worst offenders are farms in China, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Wild-caught tilapia is better, but even then, it's not doing you any favors nutritionally. What's worse than tilapia? Shark. Shark steaks, shark fin soup. Sounds exotic, but it's basically a mercury bomb. Sharks sit at the top of the ocean's food chain. That means they chow down on smaller fish who already have trace amounts of mercury in their tissue. All that mercury collects in the shark's flesh. You eat the shark, you inherit the toxins. Now, unlike some toxins that the body can filter out relatively quickly, mercury sticks around. Once it enters your system, it binds to proteins and fatty tissues, especially in your brain and kidneys. It can stay there for years, slowly interfering with how your body functions. Shark and other high mercury fish are incredibly bad. Even 1 or 2 meals can spike your mercury levels way beyond what's considered safe. There's no safe amount of shark to eat, so just skip it. You're not missing anything that you couldn't get from safer fish, like we'll discuss later. At numbers 6 and 7, Spanish and king mackerel. Mackerel can go 2 ways. It can either be one of the best fish you can eat, or one of the worst. Let's start with the bad ones. Spanish mackerel and king mackerel, we've already talked about mercury, so you know how dangerous it can be. Well, Spanish and king mackerel are 2 of the worst offenders. King mackerel is so bad, it's on the FDA's do not eat list for pregnant women. That should tell you everything. Spanish mackerel isn't quite as bad, but depending on where it's caught, it can still pack a serious dose. Fish from the Gulf of Mexico tend to have higher mercury than those from the Atlantic. The thing is, unless you're catching it yourself, there's no easy way to verify this. But mercury is not the only thing going on here. These fish have also been found to contain PCBs, a group of industrial chemicals that were banned back in the 1970s, but still hang around in the environment. They settle into the ocean floor and make their way up the food chain. And because king and Spanish mackerel eat contaminated fish, they contain more of it. PCBs have been linked to hormone disruption, immune problems, and higher risk of cancer. And just like mercury, they're hard for the body to get rid of. If you like mackerel, go for the Atlantic mackerel or chub mackerel. They're smaller, don't live as long, and don't sit as high on the food chain, so they don't pick up as much mercury or environmental toxins. Now, the next one's a little different. We've got a few fish to talk about here, but it's more of a geographic issue than a species problem. At number 5, tropical reef fish can be deadly. In warm tropical waters, especially places like the Caribbean, South Asia, and the Pacific Islands, you've got a bunch of reef fish that carry a very real risk. We're talking about fish like grouper, red snapper, barracuda, parrotfish, triggerfish, and others in that zone. The problem here is Ciguatera. Ciguatera isn't bacteria or a parasite, it's a toxin. It's produced by tiny algae that grow on coral reefs. Small reef fish nibble on the algae, bigger fish eat those fish, and the toxin travels up the chain. By the time you're eating a large reef predator like a grouper or barracuda, the toxin can be highly concentrated, even if the fish looks fresh and tastes totally fine. The worst part is that Ciguatera toxin can't be destroyed by cooking, freezing, or any kind of preparation. Once it's there, it's there. Symptoms can hit hard. Nausea, vomiting, cramping, and diarrhea are very common. Some people also get neurological symptoms like numbness, burning sensations, hot and cold flashes. It can also mess with your heartbeat or blood pressure, and can even be deadly. In fact, around 250 people die each year from Ciguatera poisoning. If you're traveling to a tropical location and someone offers you reef fish, ask what kind it is and how big it was. The larger and older the fish, the higher the risk. Barracuda in particular is a no-go. Same goes for amberjack, grouper, snapper, king mackerel, moray eel, hogfish, parrotfish, triggerfish, surgeonfish, and wrasse. So if you ever look at a menu and see any of these, especially in a tropical region, ask questions. How big was it? Where was it caught? Or better yet, just pick something else. Likewise, avoid eating the internal organs of any reef fish. That's where the highest concentrations of the toxin tend to collect. And it's always a good idea to ask if the area had any recent outbreaks. Locals usually know if Ciguatera is a problem in the region. Counting down to the worst of the worst, at number 4 we have Basa. Basa is a type of catfish, and it's one of the cheapest fish that you'll see in stores. It's mild, and it shows up in fish sticks, fillets, and fast food. Most of it comes from industrial fish farms in Vietnam, where it's raised in high-density pens in the Mekong River Delta. The water in those regions is often contaminated with runoff from agriculture, sewage, and industrial waste. And because disease spreads quickly in these packed conditions, farms have been caught using powerful antibiotics that aren't approved for use in food animals. Be very aware of Basa catfish. It's also sold under the names swai, pangasius, Vietnamese catfish, or plain white fish. Before we get to the worst 3, is this video useful? If so, please click the like button. To see more videos as we release them, click subscribe and turn notifications on. Okay, at number 3, we have tuna. Tuna can hit you hard with mercury, especially big eye, bluefin, and albacore varieties. These fish are massive, often weighing over 200 pounds and living 10 to 20 years. That gives them plenty of time to absorb and store mercury. The tuna in steaks, sushi, and canned tuna usually comes from these high-risk species. A better option is skipjack tuna. Skipjack rarely weigh more than 20 pounds and are usually caught at just 1 to 2 years old. They haven't been around long enough to build up very much mercury, making them a safer pick. Speaking of old fish, at number 2, we have the orange roughy. You walk into a fancy seafood shop and see orange roughy labeled as mild, flaky, and heart healthy. Sounds great, right? But what they don't tell you is this fish might be older than your grandmother. Seriously, some are over 100 years old. That's a century of mercury and chemical buildup in its flesh. The perfect recipe for fatigue, memory issues, and blood pressure problems. And before we get into the healthier fish, at number 1, we have eel. You'll often see eel in sushi, usually labeled as unagi or anago. But it's one of the dirtiest fish you can eat. Eels are bottom dwellers, and they soak up everything in their environment. Tests have found mercury, PCBs, flame retardants, textile dyes, and even cadmium, a heavy metal that can damage your kidneys and bones. So that fancy eel sushi roll? It's not worth it. There are safer, cleaner, and far more sustainable options. Just skip the eel. Alright, so we've gone through the worst offenders. Now let's talk about the fish that are actually worth eating. The ones that give you clean protein, healthy fats, and real nutritional value without all the toxic baggage. Let's start with some of the safest, cleanest, and most nutrient-dense options. Wild-caught salmon is one of the best. It's rich in omega-3s, has low mercury, and contains astaxanthin, a powerful antioxidant that supports your skin, eyes, and blood circulation. Sardines, anchovies, and herring are also all excellent. They're small, they live short lives, and they don't have time to accumulate toxins. Plus, they're packed with calcium, B12, omega-3, and selenium. And here's one that doesn't get mentioned enough: bass. Bass is generally a clean fish, especially when it's wild caught or raised in well-regulated freshwater farms. It has a mild flavor, firm texture, and is a good source of omega-3s and protein. Just be careful with where it comes from. Some lakes and rivers, especially near industrial zones, are contaminated. If you're buying bass, check if it's from the US or Canada, where testing and water quality standards are more tightly enforced. Now, let's talk shellfish, because oysters and mussels are in a league of their own. When grown in clean waters, they're one of the most sustainable and nutrient-dense foods you can eat. Oysters are loaded with zinc, selenium, and vitamin B12, and they're extremely low in mercury. Mussels, especially green-lipped mussels from New Zealand, deserve a special mention. They contain a unique combination of omega-3s, not just EPA and DHA, but also ETA, which has been shown to significantly reduce joint pain, arthritis, and asthma. Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about one more thing that needs to be cleared up: wild-caught versus farmed fish. We touched on this earlier, but here's the simple version. Wild-caught fish live in the wild. They eat their natural diet, swim freely, and aren't pumped full of antibiotics or artificial feed. They tend to have more omega-3s, fewer inflammatory omega-6s, and lower contamination, assuming they're not from polluted waters. Farmed fish, on the other hand, can go either way. Some are raised responsibly, with clean water, no unnecessary antibiotics, and high-quality feed. Others, overcrowded pens, disease, and chemical overload. So when you're buying your fish, check the label. Look for wild caught when possible or certified sustainable farms. If the label doesn't say where it's from, that's a big red flag. And one last tip, rotate your fish. Don't eat the same one every day. Even the cleanest fish can accumulate trace toxins if you overdo it. Next, check out our video on the top 10 best anti-diabetic drinks. These will amaze you. Remember to click like and subscribe.